Would like to call the October study session to order. Let the record show everyone's here but Dr. Holman, who has a forum tonight, so hopefully he'll be here a little bit later. And if you would, please silence your cell phones and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Speakers. Okay. We will move on to special recognition, Hall of Fame inductees. Dr. Ritter.
Mark Manus and Josie McPhail, please.
Yes, we're very proud to announce tonight our list of the inaugural inductees to our Hall of Fame. This is a concept that actually Dr. Ritter and I have talked about for the last several years, and very excited about launching this year. And Josie McPhail, if we have any luck in finding the slides, we'll see. We may hit escape. And then, I don't know. We will go over the inductees today. It's October 28th. At the University Plaza, and like I said, we're very excited about having the inductees this year. So, okay, you let them know who they are.
I sure will. Good evening, Board of Education. I hope you guys are having a great week so far. We're very excited about the Hall of Fame, and I have 3 outstanding individuals to share with you tonight. Hopefully this is not the first that you've heard of them. But anyway, all of them have such different journeys on their way to success, but the neat thing is that their educational foundation was right here in our district. So the first inductee is General John Ashcroft. He graduated from Hillcrest in 1960 and is known mainly for his role in public service. He was the U.S. Attorney General, U.S. Missouri Senator, and our state's 50th governor. He attended Yale University and received a Juris Doctorate from the University of Chicago School of Law after he graduated from Hillcrest. He currently teaches at Regent University and is also the CEO and president of the Ashcroft Group. Our second inductee is Rabbi Walter Jacob, and he graduated from Springfield High School, now Central, in 1947. Dr. Jacob comes from a family that produced 15 generations of rabbis. He currently holds and has held many leadership positions in the Jewish community, which include the senior scholar at Rodef Shalom Congregation, the president of Abraham Geiger College in Berlin, and the president of the Institute for Progressive Jewish Law and Ethics. He helps edit and write the annual book for the Institute of Progressive Jewish Law and Ethics and has published 39 books. He's a graduate of Drury College, now Drury University, and where he received an honorary doctorate degree several years ago. Thank you, Beth. Our last inductee is Mr. Larry D. Young, who also graduated from Hillcrest, but in 1972. He began his career in the beverage industry right after he graduated from high school, so he didn't attend college. He worked his way all the way up to the top. He currently holds the position of CEO and president of Dr. Pepper's Snapple Group, so that's a really neat story to share as well. In 2008, he was inducted into the Beverage World Soft Drink Hall of Fame, and just last month, he carried his organization to receiving the Beverage Forum Company of the Year, which is an international award. We're very excited, like I mentioned, about these inductees, and are looking forward to celebrating with them at the event on October 28th, which is over at University Plaza. If you haven't yet, you will be receiving an invitation and a ticket to that. It's also open to the public. They can find more information through the district's website. There's a link there, and tickets are $25. Can I answer any questions for you about this initiative? Yes?
You might just explain how they were selected.
Sure. We had a great selection process and a good partnership with 4 and 7 magazine. We opened up the option to nominate folks to the public. We collected those, and so did 417. We had about 30 different individuals that were nominated. We took a look at those, had a set of criteria that we went through, narrowed it down to 12, and then we had a group of 15 individuals that were influencers in the community, community leaders, that helped us narrow it down to 3. We met one day and went through some different procedures and practices and narrowed it down to 3. Anything else? Thank you.
Great job, Josie, Mark. That'll be a fun at lunchtime. Excuse me. Moving on to, losing my voice here. Moving on to strategic discussion. Tonight we wanted to spend some time talking about our legislative priorities. Certainly going to be an interesting time in the state after January, with, as we mentioned before, 74 new state legislators at the minimum. And so it will be an interesting process. And so I think it's really important for us to have the opportunity to make sure that our delegation and even the rest of the state understands what is important to us as a board and the district legislatively. And so I think I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ritter to kind of talk about the draft copy that was provided to us as far as legislative priorities, and hopefully we'll have some discussion about those and maybe flesh those out a little bit in some detail of what the board thinks is important and where we need to go from there. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Ritter to present those or talk about those.
Though you may remember a conversation we had with the county and the city when we came together as a group, and we were talking at that time looking for some common ground as far as initiatives related to the legislature. And that is continuing. We are continue to have that conversation. So as we go through this, you may identify a couple things that you could see that might be common ground. For instance, the very last initiative that's listed is no unfunded mandates. Then also the revenue stream recommendation as far as syntax, etc. So there's some examples of that. So I just want you as a board and also the community to realize that there will be some joint efforts as far as legislative priorities. Also, we are working with, just to kind of give a heads up, we are working with Scott Mars to set up a time for us as a team to sit down with the legislators that are newly elected and or re-elected to have that conversation with them, and hopefully we'll have that soon after the election. So anyway, what I'd like to do as far as the process here is to take each of these themes and then just to see if there's any initiatives, specific initiatives or thoughts or concerns that you may have under that. For instance, in the learning environment, there might be a case of where we may want some legislation around cyberbullying. Now, I know there has been and is currently some cyberbullying legislation, but there might be some language that we may want to adjust or look into, and that's just an example of one thing that could come up at that time. So anyway, so what I'd like to do then is just take it one area at a time, see if there's any questions, see if you want to improve on the language, and then also what I'd like to do in each area is right below learning environment, I would put bullets and just say this is an area, a specific area that we would like to look at under learning environment. Okay? So under learning environment, I was just curious. Oh, by the way, I should talk process a little bit more. This language came forward after looking at MASA, Missouri Association of School Administrators, legislative priorities, as well as Missouri School Boards Association's legislative priorities, and then conversations with Jerry Lee and Tom Prater, and then ultimately the cabinet had a chance. And really, this is where the language, most of the language came from, was in the cabinet review. Okay? The last thing I'd like to say is that I did take the opportunity to visit with my teacher advisory or open forum, as well as my parent open forum, and had a chance to look through this, and they had an opportunity to have some conversation around this as well. Really with no recommendations as far as changes. Okay? So let's start with the learning environment. Springfield Public Schools SPS believes students should learn in comfortable and sustainable facilities. SPS believes all students should be provided a safe and healthy environment for learning. Any thoughts on that? Anything that we should be focusing on? Anybody?
One thing that I'd certainly like to add in there is supporting legislation that would allow us to access funds to start implementing a more energy efficiency upgrades. You know, the governor I know is very supportive of those things, and I think some of the Department of Natural Resources I think has a fund, but you know, if we could access some of these things so that some of our upfront costs can be even loaned to us so that we can repay them with demonstrated savings, that would, I think, not only allow us, but allow all sorts of school boards to take advantage of energy efficiency upgrades.
So really looking at some kind of legislation around grants.
Grants or loans or revolving loan programs for energy efficiency and sustainability upgrades.
Okay.
You know, because we use $4 million a year in energy. I think what Scott or Greg told me that what we're looking at. So anything we can do to save some money.
I hope that topic comes up under the Missouri Public Education Visioning Project, which Physical Resources is one of.
That's right.
That I hope that will be part of that also, as far as the future of public education and supporting that. Because I had a question about that. There's really two things there to me. One is what Andy's talking about as far as sustainability and green, and then the safety. I mean, those are, I know it's all in the learning environment, but I think those are two separate things of talking about safety of our kids and then also the facilities that they're involved, and it may just be a bullet point under there.
Okay.
But to me, we'd certainly be supportive of whatever legislation comes down that would improve the safety of our kids, whether it's cyberbullying, sexual harassment, bullying in general, whatever the case may be. So we may want to, I don't know how you, I know you got
Maybe
two separate sentences,
it could
but
be
I don't know if
separate.
it's a separate bullet point, a separate whole concept, but under learning environment, to me, there's one is, we're talking about sustainability, and the other one is safety of our kids, and I think those are two unique
Okay.
initiatives that we would support, I don't want to say differently, but independently.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Two good ones. Okay. On early childhood, now SPS primary responsibility is K-12. SPS strongly supports early childhood education for every child. Thoughts on that? First of all, do you support that idea? And if you do we need to?
Isn't this where the collaboration with the city and the county is going to come into play?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question there. Each one of them have brought that as a priority.
Well, and I wonder if, I know there's statistics like for every dollar spent on early childhood, there's a savings in the lifetime of that individual of X amount of dollars. It seems like that might be a good bullet point put there, just because it reinforces not only the need, but the value.
Okay.
I mean, do we want to put in there that we support, support early childhood education is kind of a motherhood and apple pie term. Do we want to actually support state funding for pre-K, or legislation that would help support
Right,
that, whether it's pre-K, parents as teachers, both, all of it? This is kind of a, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it seems it's yeah, thank you. Kind of a generic term, as opposed to, this is what we would like to see happen.
I would say supports funding for quality early childhood education.
You have to put parentheses then, as long as it doesn't affect our budget.
Yeah.
That's a concern.
We can put an asterisk by each one of those.
The real catch-all there, of course, that really kind of angers legislators, is when you say Arkansas has it and Oklahoma has it. So that kind of upsets them.
But I think you need to differentiate between, early childhood and quality early childhood.
No, I agree, and that's going to be in all of our languages. Good. Okay, any more on that one? Okay. Curriculum. SBS believes the curriculum must prepare all students for the 21st century. This preparation includes readiness for the workplace and or college. SBS believes that all curriculum decisions must be made at the local level with a focus on the whole child. Really what we're doing is this language is really shifting. It's still keeping the focus on the basics, but we're needing to look at and check how well our kids are prepared for the work world as well as college readiness, and what kind of skills is that calling for. And I think that is a legislative as far as the requirements and the standards on the high school level. So, but anyway, any thoughts over and above what's stated there, or do you support what's stated there?
Are we asking them to do anything? Or are we just back to
We're asking
stating
them
what
not
we
to
believe?
do something.
I'm just throwing it out. Is that, you know,
We're
it's
just stating a position.
stating a fact?
Yeah, because we're part of a 31 state consortium. There's going to need to be some kind of legislation related to that consortium of common standards. Okay, and what we're asking for in that consortium of common standards is to make sure that they're focused on the 21st century needs.
So do we need to support the core standards?
I think so.
Have them adopt those? I mean, that's what I'm getting at, is do we want to say that, or do we want to keep it as generic as Ms. Twitty?
I feel like this is coming across more of as a belief system rather than legislative priorities. If it's a generic opinion that our board would be saying that we have toward the education of children in the Springfield district and throughout the state potentially, but unless I think we get much more specific, if I were a potential legislator reading this, it'd be like, well, yes, well, of course that. So, I mean, I think this is a good start, but I really think it's, I don't see legislative priority here.
Well, what we would do there is put together legislative language to help deal with the common standards. That's what that is.
What are we going to ask them to do? Basically, that's
Yeah. Do we want
what we
to?
want you to do or not do in Jeff City. Yeah, I mean, is that not? That doesn't say this.
No.
That's not there. That's
Well, I don't think
that's
we
my
want
point.
to carte blanche say we want them to adopt core standards if we don't know what they are. I mean, I think that's where you get into some danger. So it seems at some level that we want them to confer with local educational officials about, you know, before any decisions are made at the state level regarding, you know, core standards or a common curriculum. Or
We do say in there at the very end where we're saying all those decisions should be made at the local level, and so maybe we need to say, including a review of common core or some kind of language around core standards.
The core standards, how we deliver it is through our curriculum.
Right.
So that's the local control. The core standards, so once they set it up, then you have to set up your curriculum to make sure you deliver those things. So I still believe I'd say the same thing. I think we need some input before they vote on common core standards, because, I mean, the whole child, we're not, NCLB doesn't focus on the whole child. MAP doesn't focus on the whole child. So, and there are common core standards with math and communication arts and science. So, I think we've gotten away from that. So I'm not sure either. I never like to talk about it unless I can give you a suggestion on how to word it here, because just to say, well, I think I agree with what the others have said. I don't see that there's side under curriculum. I don't know. I just think that one needs some work, because I'm never sure when somebody says, oh, we ought to prepare students for the 21st century. Somebody tell me in 2080 or what they need, or 2050, because I don't know. And if there's somebody that smart out there, because I'm not sure anybody really knows what's going to have to be done in 2050 so that we can prepare students that are being born now and be ready for 2050. So, and others would say the workplace, and I keep saying which workplace?
So-
What are the common things in all workplaces? Because we can't just prepare them for a workplace, because each workplace may want some kind of different skills. So what, it's not that I don't think we ought to, it's just that I think those are, those are big things that for us to tackle with the legislature.
Do we want to just simply say then, Mr. Renner, that basically, we know the core standards are coming through that consortium. Do we want to just leave it with, please leave it up to the local community as far as developing the curriculum?
Can you say, there's nothing wrong with the sentences you got there as far as sort of an introductory, but I think there's some bullet points of specific action items, and
Okay.
maybe it is,
Okay, there we go. Okay.
that the curriculum development be left up to the local level, at the local school boards to meet the Common Core. Something, or we would oppose legislation that would dictate, that doesn't do that,
There you
or
go.
something to that effect that would, because the core standards are coming. But I just think it's important that we take a position of, not taking that control out of our hands to meet those standards. I think the water's under the bridge as far as the standards themselves, with what they are, since the state's already adopted those, but I guess legislatively they haven't done anything. The commissioner has said that we're one of the 32 or 3, whatever
31.
it is. 31.
Okay, got that. Then the next one we have is on governance. Now, this is preachy and it's kind of making a statement, so maybe we don't want to say all this. Let me know. SPS believes that locally elected boards of education are fundamental to the governance of school system. Basically, we have several examples, 3 now, where they're no longer local boards. The school board should set the vision for the school district, establish the structures, adopt policies, hire the superintendent, and engage in advocacy for children and their schools. So that kind of sets the stage for the following. SPS opposes charter schools because they are not accountable to publicly elected school boards. Okay, maybe we don't say enough there, but the next one is SPS believes the school system should be free from unnecessary laws, regulations, and rules that inhibit them from establishing innovative programs. Okay, in other words, the state telling us what to do. The next one is SPS opposes legislation, regulation, rule, or judicial decision which would diminish local control, increase bureaucratic and administrative burdens, or allow the management and control of public school districts to be removed from local boards of education. It kind of repeats a little bit of what's in the opening statement.
See, I think this is the model.
All of them should be.
The belief system is first, under what we believe in governance, and then there's 3 bullet points that if I were a legislator, I could go, well, how do they feel about charter schools? And if I'm a local legislator, I better know that. But, to me, this allows them to look at some pretty concise bullet points and go, okay, well, this legislation doesn't
This is a good model.
fall under that.
Okay.
So it seems to me that maybe that's what we're looking for.
Well, we'll do that up in the top.
And I think we need an example, I don't want this to be too big, because you don't want to hand them a notebook full of things, and sometimes we've reduced it so small that it doesn't say anything. But should be free from unnecessary laws, regulations, and rules. Do we have some of those now we can point to, or are we saying we don't? I mean, I don't think it has to be on here, but if somebody would ask me, what are you talking about? I mean, I can give them an example, but I think we need a for instance that all of us agree to, so when if we have our meeting, we can say, for instance, this, for instance, this, in the same way the last one, that, what are we talking about there? Because so far, those schools that have been removed from local boards of education haven't shown any improvement.
No, they haven't. In fact,
None. In fact, they
flat or getting
continue
worse.
flat or gotten worse. So, I mean,
That's not
you
the
got to
issue.
do something,
Yeah.
but they don't have good examples. Yeah, I just think we need them collectively here in case if somebody says, "What do you mean?"
I would suggest also that under the bullet points that we change the tone a bit in terms of instead of SPS opposes charter schools because, I would perhaps suggest changing it to SPS opposes charter schools if they are not accountable to public elected school boards or held to the same standards as public schools. Or it believes the school system supports legislation that would free the school system from unnecessary laws, regulations, and rules, and encourage the establishment of innovative programs. And again, I think examples are important. And then the same thing, SPS encourages legislation, regulations, rules, or judicial decisions which would encourage or increase local control, decrease bureaucratic administrative burdens, blah blah blah. Just kind of switch it from
Kind of a positive.
Negatives to
a
positive.
negative to a positive, because especially the one about free from unnecessary laws, that seems to be, we're talking about stuff that's happened in the past, so as opposed to what we want to happen in the future, that we're kind of whining about what's already in the books as opposed to what we want them to put in the books, which I think is, put in some language in there that encourages innovative decisions from local boards if there's accountability attached to it.
But
Like
if there's some on the books currently that need to go away, should we address those specifically if there's an unnecessary law or regulation or something that is doing that right now? Rather than beat around the bush about it, should we say, stop doing it?
Right.
Now, granted, we may be the only person out there doing that. I understand that. But if there are, that's keeping us from doing things that we need to do for kids, should we identify them specifically, subset under that or whatever, rather than just generically saying unnecessary laws? Well, here's one right here that we need to get rid of.
For example, in other words.
For an
i.e.
example, and we would support that going away.
Okay.
And I don't have one on top of my head, a map, but other than that, that's coming up.
Okay. Anything else
That
on
makes
that?
sense. I do like Andy's discussion
I
about the
think-
charter schools, is changing that to if rather than because. I think that's much cleaner and
Good. It was my intent to put the bullets ultimately, so.
and we didn't talk about open enrollment.
Open enrollment? That would fall under.
I'm not saying, I just throw that out. I don't,
Governance, isn't it?
yeah, I just don't, is that something we
that would
want
be
to talk
governance.
about?
That could be a listed right there. That would be one example.
Because that's, everything I hear right now, that's the primary push is going to be open enrollment.
So we could put IE, open enrollment.
But I think we need to define that because open enrollment that is followed, that's accompanied with appropriate state funding per student, just in general, I'm not opposed to. In general, I mean, that's a very blanket statement, but it's open enrollment in which there's no money that follows the child into the accepting district that is very problematic.
Well, the thing though, open enrollment, if we were to do it the way you were discussing it, the receiving district wouldn't have any say. In other words, if the money comes with the child, the district has to receive them. Okay, so that is taking the local control out of the hands.
Right, I think we'd have to be, and I think that's a whole nother discussion about,
Open enrollment.
And-
I don't know enough about what's getting ready to be proposed and why. I mean, I think I know why.
I think what you just
I
said.
mean, I
is
think
what
it's
know why.
to go to the back door for
Yeah.
everything else they haven't been able to get
Vouchers by another term.
or tax credits or whatever.
But you
so-
see, it all falls under governance. In other words, they want the state, the same thing is true for Prop A. That's another issue.
But I do
Well,
think.
and I guess, to Chris's point, yeah, I'm not saying that we should put in that we oppose open enrollment necessarily, because I don't know that I do, but I may or may not, depending on how it comes down.
Right.
But I think there's something, much like MSBA's policy, which is they don't oppose open enrollment, but they don't oppose it if certain things happen. And districts don't get harmed financially
It may be
because
good-
of that.
It
And
may
I
be
don't.
good to look at their language. and
Yeah,
see what they-
I just throw that out because the only reason I did is because I know it's going to be front and center legislatively this year. We've been told by the new chairman, Education Committee, that's first thing on his list to get passed is open enrollment.
Oh, he's the head of the House, isn't he? Tilly?
Blanket open enrollment or only?
We don't know.
I don't know.
enrollment For,
They just open enrollment, and what that means, I'm not sure. So, I mean, the cow's kind of out of the barn in St. Louis with the start of that with respect to
It's not
unaccredited district.
that's what I mean.
But that's a model that could be expanded potentially universally
Again,
if we're not
we're
careful.
surrounded
So I don't know.
We're surrounded by states that are doing it, so here we go again.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, on accountability, SBS supports a formative student assessment system, which includes performance-based components that hold students accountable. SPS supports legislation that takes a comprehensive approach to staff evaluation, including process and performance results. SPS, the next one, SPS supports credible research to improve all aspects of public education. And so what's going on there, of course, is there is going to be legislation that's going to be part of coming from No Child Left Behind. And so we as a district will be challenged, I think, to take a position. And this doesn't talk about any kind of incentive pay. It just basically makes a connection between what's going on in the classroom, the processes, and student performance, part of the teacher's evaluation, staff evaluation.
On that
Yeah.
first sentence, it says, performance-based components that hold students accountable. Doesn't really say accountable for what.
Oh,
I mean, are we
okay.
trying to say for their own learning, for their own achievement? I mean, to me, it seems like that needs to be clarified a little bit there.
Thoughts about that one? I'm not really sure what the second bullet point, as far as credible research, from a legislative standpoint. I mean, I
Well,
don't
we should-
disagree with the term, what it says, but from a legislative, I'm not sure I want them doing any research.
Really, what we should say there is, when it says support, we should say, and fund and encourage research-driven
Okay.
decision-making.
Okay.
And so, because too often there is no research that supports the charter schools. There is no research that supports the vouchers or the tax credit. And really, that's what that is. And so,
I mean, that's kind of a belief statement to some degree.
well, to be honest, when it says SPS supports credible funded research, I think the word we need to put some kind of language in there that
But aren't we trying to say we want legislative decisions in an ideal world to be based on
research.
credible, but that's not what that says, really.
Well, it says more than that.
Yeah, don't confuse me with the facts.
It says more than that.
Yeah.
Well,
Credible research and actual facts and data are two different things, potentially. But maybe, I don't.
What do you want it to say?
well, I mean,
Can we
what
get
I
back
want
to
it to say and what kind of impact it's going to have. I mean,
Two things looks like. We want a formative assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like legislation or whatever for that. And staff evaluation is the second one. I'm just not sure what the third one. Then
Research-based decision-making.
if I go meet with the legislators, what am I going to tell them I want them to do?
We want them to support funding of research-driven decision-making. Which maybe
Good luck
doesn't
with
fall
that.
under accountability. Maybe that falls under finance. It could fall under, might be finance rather than there.
Yeah, but it seems to me that it's two different things. We're asking them, one, to fund.
You don't want
I
to make
guess I'm
decisions with
confused.
no research, is what you're trying to do.
Research-based decision-making as opposed to shooting from the hip, doing what,
You know,
which is happening
They do that?
all over the country.
I think that we're probably tonight spending far longer on this legislative priorities and what we think it means in a deeper way than probably any of the legislators, as they take it and read it, will know what we mean or have. So to me, you know, if we create these bullet points or these IEs that examples, the best way we can do it, and then in individual meetings, because it depends on whether you're talking at the state level or at the federal level.
That's true.
And
We're going to be doing both.
it means different things, to different folks, and you're dealing with totally different programs, and so I think to demonstrate what it is that we're concerned with out of this document, the IEs, so that they can kind of hook on to something, is the most important, because otherwise I think they're going to look at these as all like, yep, that's a good point. And so I really, out of all of it, could we just work on it a little further and to come up with
Okay,
the examples?
Examples, sure.
I think that third bullet point's a laudable goal, but I think to try to convey that, it might dilute our message.
You mean the research?
Mhm.
I'll drop that because I think we could pick up the intent that I had there in the finance piece, or we could do it in the governance. Okay. Under the finance, SPS must be given maximum flexibility in the use of financial resources. Everybody okay with that one? All right, SPS strongly opposes any attempt to divert revenue committed to or intended for public schools.
Exclamation.
Well, and I'd like, because it's
Exclamation
not
point.
anywhere else, this includes educational tax credits for private education. I think it's not in there anywhere. And
we could use an IE on that one.
Yep.
because, I mean, I've heard the language, well, it's not really diverting revenue because it's not revenue that actually comes into the state. I mean, I've heard it explained in a lot of different ways, so I think being as explicit as we can there would be good.
I'll use some examples.
It's called several different things, so.
All right. SPS strongly encourages the legislature to improve the revenue stream for education by increasing taxes on tobacco and alcohol, taxing internet sales, and limiting tax credits. Anything we need to add to that? Slash what?
And/or limiting tax credits.
Oh, I thought you meant, yeah, I thought you had something else you wanted to add.
Yeah, because right there, limiting tax credits. I mean, if we just talked, I think we have to explicitly talk about educational tax credits or whatever they were called in the
Well-
previous legislative.
Yeah,
But
because this is something different.
This is something different.
Well,
This-
yeah, I know, but somebody could go, oh, well,
Oh,
you just want
that's
to
your
limit them,
question.
you don't
Okay.
want to get rid of them?
Okay, limiting. Now, what'd you say, Andy?
I'm confused now, what you're saying, Chris, with respect to the limiting tax credits, because this particular tax credit is talking about
All tax credits.
Historical.
historical districts,
whole works.
the whole works of the 90 or 60-some tax credits that the state's got right now, that's millions of dollars that is going away.
Right, but the advocates for educational tax credits have always said, well, look at all these other things that people get tax credits for, so, yeah, I don't,
Yeah,
I mean, do
I understand
we-
what you're saying, but they seem to be, I think they're two different things.
they are.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, that's why I think in that first bullet point,
Okay.
We
There
have
you're
to
talking
include-
The list
those
of
kind of
tax
tax
credits.
credits with respect to vouchers
In
and
other words,
that.
listed tax, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
well, what were they called? Educational tax credits, weren't they? I don't know.
Okay. I thought for sure one of you was going to say a statewide 1% increase in sales tax. But anyway, because I know that's going to come from Kansas City or St. Louis. All right, the next one. SPS supports a review of Missouri's approach to funding public education and encourages a more simplified and equitable system. Now, that's, again, a philosophical statement.
Does that mean you don't understand the funding for it?
That's
Yeah, the
exactly right.
funding
No, really, the pattern is very clear. Over every 5 years, they rewrite the funding formula. It's time. This is the 5th year. So I just thought maybe we don't want to put that one in there at all. Just drop it. Wait till it happens, then respond. But the two key words there is simplified and equitable.
Do we really want them messing with the formula right now?
Yeah,
Yeah, the answer is yes, we do.
that's
Well,
me
then-
talking. I don't know about Steve. He's got that look. But anyway,
See, it seems to me, it kind of goes back to what Gene was saying, and Norm, when I saw the draft of this that got sent out, I responded to you, there's too much here. If I were a local legislator, I wouldn't be able to say, okay, what am I supposed to remember that is important to SPS? There's too much here. It's good, it's what we believe, but there aren't just a couple things that people can capture. So I don't know how we're going to do that.
well, I could simplify it. This gives us a good, thorough conversation about what we really want to focus on. But I have a feeling the legislature is going to be all over the place this year.
I think it's more critical now for us to be now there may be a balance between what we have here and what we had last year, which basically said we need more funding. That's all we said. And so to me, I think this is
And they didn't do much, though, really.
anything. And so, I don't know, with the potential things coming down the road, I don't know, I just feel like we need to be as specific as we can, and, I don't want to book, as Bruce said, but I think they need to know some specifics about charters or revenue streams and things like that they need to know.
We're getting, when you talk about revisiting the foundation formula, we're getting ready to lose some institutional knowledge up there through term limits.
Right.
Charlie Shields is getting ready to walk out the door,
Right,
and
he
he's the
wrote
guy
it.
that
He wrote
knows.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I want them to revisit it until they're prepared to revisit it, or for us to find out, and this has nothing to do with legislative priorities, but how do we become who do we find that's going to be a part of that process, that that we can help to school them on the foundation formula through our CFO, or what it is that we're needing that could be helpful to them, because it is totally not understandable in its current status, and so I think it's important, if you want it revisited, if that is somehow mixed in here, that we have a plan.
I think what's going to happen is the open enrollment's going to be pushed really hard to call for consolidation, which is going to mean that the funding formula is going to be impacted. It's all going to be related. And so maybe we pull this out and then hang our hats on the other things that we've been talking about, because it's all going to be related that way. The open enrollment piece, for instance.
I mean, I agree with what we say here, but it's, right now, I don't think anybody will want to touch it. The foundation formula, I don't think. I think everybody's
it's gonna
scared
be
to death
impactful.
of it because, one, like you said, Charlie Shields is gone, and I'm not sure how well he understood it since it's been changed. I mean, even though he wrote it, it's been tinkered with a lot since he wrote it. But, I couldn't put everybody in the state of Missouri who understands the foundation formula.
There's a major
Probably
protection.
its desk.
There's a major protection in the formula to protect the small districts.
Very much so.
And so that's what I meant. And see, I think it's all going to be related. So we could pull this out and get the same results because we have positions in other places. So
And of the 4 bullet points on here, if they remember the other 3, we've made an impact.
yeah, I think they're related. So we
Well,
can pull this.
obviously, the revenue stream is the most important one there because they're at some point, they're going to have to quit. They can't keep cutting to success here. They're going to have to deal on the other side of the equation at some point.
The last part, I don't think anybody, do I need to be clearer than that, or?
Nope.
Right there, that might be a good place though for a couple of examples, because I think that that's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, and people that aren't connected with education aren't really quite sure what those are. So I think finding a couple general examples there would be helpful.
Well, and putting the dollar amounts with it.
Yeah,
too.
that's a good idea, Jean.
And even if we didn't have any, we still don't want them.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So that's all we have. Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, the message I have is streamline it more. In the upper part, use bullet points to clarify, to give more detail to it. And then eventually what I see in the process, I'll bring this back to Cabinet for more conversation. And then eventually send it to each of you to give you an opportunity to read through it one more time. And then the board will have a chance to again look at it in October in the regular meeting, because we won't need it really until we meet with them after the election, November 2nd election. So we still have time to process and develop this. So I just think this is going to be a critical piece, because we have 75 new, no matter what, 75 new legislators next year. And I think they're going to need to have their hands held a little bit. And so maybe this will help a little bit.
And I think to your point, Chris, about length and the number of things, I think this will be a year where much more communication is going to have to occur between our delegation and us, of keeping them informed of our thoughts and beliefs and supports and whatever. So I think hopefully we'll have ample opportunity to convey those. At least I think we're going to have to, just to, in some cases, to protect ourselves. Okay. Any other comments on the legislative priority? I know we took a little bit longer than I thought, but that's okay. I thought good discussion. It's worth it. I think that those are important things to be talking about. Anything else, Dr. Ritter, that you need to bring up about this? Okay. Moving on, informational items. 4.01, Health Services Program Evaluation.
Yes, Les Ford.
Good evening. You have in front of you, under separate cover, the Health Services Program Evaluation as required by MSIP Standard 8.1 and Board Policy IM. With me tonight are Jean Graybill and Jeff Rogers, and we are available to answer any questions you might have.
Question from the board. Dr. Prater.
A couple of questions. It looks like the flu vaccine program was a huge plus. I don't know if you can put any dollar figures on what it cost us versus what revenue we maintained, didn't lose attendance money because of it or not.
What I can tell you is that the flu vaccine itself was free because we gave the H1N1 vaccine. And we did have some expenditures as far as Band-Aids and those kinds of things. We used employees, myself, and a couple of other folks that work with us through the grant through Jordan Valley to provide the vaccines. So it was staff time. There were some costs, of course, with copying and sending out permission forms. And so there was a cost to that, although we did offset that some with some donations for money for that. But certainly the attendance dollars outweighed the costs and of providing the vaccine for kids and the lost educational time that they would have had we not done it.
Have you seen more utilization of health service by students in the current economic climate, worries about families losing health insurance, and have the nurses been busier taking care of sicker kids, or do you get a feel for that?
Yes, we do have increases in numbers of office visits by students, both for problems with illness, injuries, those kinds of things, that we continue to see that rise. Also, the number of students that have chronic health conditions, that continues to increase on an annual basis as well. Our Medicaid numbers are increasing too. We're seeing that on a quarterly basis, that's increasing. And this, of course, that just parallels right along with those kids that are on free and reduced lunch. And oftentimes, the school nurse is their primary access to health care. If they're ill or injured over the weekend, they wait until the next day to come in and see the school nurse, who then is that gatekeeper that makes the determination as to whether or not, what kind of resources do they need. Do they need to go to the emergency room? Can they go to our school link services, Trudy's Kids now? Do they need dental health and those kinds of things? And we've been very fortunate because we've been able to bring a lot of community resources here. And we get almost $1 million worth of in-kind services on an annual basis for our students. So we have lots of students in need. That continues to rise.
Well, then a follow-up question, and I'll quit hogging the floor here. Have you had any more trouble in obtaining referral places for these kids that need to be sent out? Are you able to get most of these kids where they need to go when they need something?
Well, having the Federally Qualified Health Center, Jordan Valley Community Health Center, has been a marvelous asset to our community as well as the school district. So we've been able, for instance, for those kids that have dental needs, we can get them in that day, which even a few years ago we were not able to do whatsoever. And then Ronald McDonald House has their tooth truck, which also provides on-site services for the kids. And they go out, have their service, and then immediately go back into the classroom. So there's not that long-term missed educational time.
Ms. Callen?
Are we able to bill for any of the services that our school nurses provide for Medicaid patients?
At this time, they're working on a solution to that with the Department of Social Services. They had a mass funding cut this past summer. The governor cut some funding and then asked that the Department of Social Services work with the Missouri School Board Association in looking at funding for direct services that school nurses provide. So far, the agreement has just come out, or came out in August, and it just has a piece in it about full-time private duty nursing. But our expectation is that over the year, they're going to be looking at ways that we can provide direct services and then bill for those services for health services for nurses. So that is our expectation, that we should be seeing that sometime this year.
Yeah, because it seems, talking about equitable, if more and more the state government is relying on school districts to provide primary care
Exactly.
to students, and we have to do it for free, whereas that same student could go to a doctor's office and that doctor's office could bill for their nurses'
All the
time.
screening, too, that
Yeah.
is done in a physician's office. Certainly, those are things that we provide on a regular basis for our students. But yes, and we've been told by the Missouri School Board Association that they're very committed. The governor is very committed to making sure that that process is put in place very soon.
Right, and I think, you know, it makes sense for schools to be that front line in a lot of cases, not just for nursing, but again, there's a lot of expectation that we'll take care of those needs without the appropriate funding or support to follow that. And I think that that's where we really need to advocate. You know, I mean, schools are a great place because that's where kids are normally. It's close to homes. Usually, schools are close to homes, and so it makes sense. But I also think that we need to be treated fairly in terms of reimbursement for those services.
Great.
Questions? Mr. Osmer?
Got a question about the health risk assessments. First of all, the numbers are great. I mean, we've gone from 237 in 2006 to 1,500 in 2009, 2010, which is, I think, is fantastic. My question, and then a little further down, you said that St. John's had invited 262 of the employees that had 4 or more risk factors to participate in or to work with them. Do you know how many employees took advantage of that, and are we tracking or trying to track or survey to see whether or not the health risk assessment is leading to intentional decisions being made to try to remedy some of these high risk factors?
In the program that you mentioned, the high-risk employees, that was offered during the summertime, so we didn't, I think we were under about 10 employees that actually took part of that program. So in hindsight, we just looked at that program again to offer it at a better time. But in those employees that we identified, there were several situations of employees making those changes, those lifestyle changes that we're going after. But we continue to work with not only St. John's but other vendors. Once we identify high-risk employees, we're trying to steer them towards various programs to hopefully lower those risk factors.
And is there a way to track or survey so that we can kind of get an idea of whether or not some lifestyle decisions are being made in response to these assessments? Or
we're doing regular surveys and things like that we can provide to you, but I think in just gathering all that information from all the vendors, I think we're at a point we've created this awareness for our employee group as far as getting plugged in and getting involved, but we've kind of come to this crossroads where we really need to now find a way to really engage them to make those lifestyle changes.
And am I not correct? And they do this health risk assessment. We don't have names, do we?
No, I receive is group data.
And I think that's important because I think some of the things Mr. Hosmer is asking for, we would have to have specific names, and I don't think that's the intent of the program. The intent is to get them to participate in the program, then have a third party, which is St. John's, do the things they need to get them hooked into the areas to help. So, I guess we could get some group data from them, but I just don't want us, if I start surveying people, then pretty soon they're going to say, how'd you get my name? Or how come I'm being surveyed? 1,500 is a great number, but when we have 3,000, we still got 1,500 to go that need to be doing a health risk assessment. And I'm doing one online where I work because otherwise I got to pay some for my health insurance, So I've got an incentive to do that, but that's all coming back to me. And then if I am identified with some things, then I work again. I think that's an important thing to, maybe St. John's can help us to see that, okay, we've identified them, but nobody's doing anything, then obviously something's got to happen there to make the connection. You got to do something, and I think awareness is the first thing, and I think we've done a good job in doing that. And I think the next thing is to work with St. John's to say, okay, once they've identified it and you've got it, what exactly can you all do to help get these people in your program? And then, again, we could have some group data. I just don't want us to I don't want us to cross the line.
Yeah, and the information that we will receive that we brag about are those personal success stories that folks are calling and saying, I'm off medication, I've made this lifestyle change, and those are the individuals that we want to put in our newsletter and get out there to promote the program.
They volunteer to do that. I think that's wonderful. If we solicit volunteers who have been successful and would like to use that as an example, I just don't want us to make sure that that this is anonymous and stays that
well,
way.
and I certainly don't want to get into anybody's personal information. I think what I would like to see is just numbers in terms of, and you can survey all employees, did you get the risk assessment? If you did you have a risk factor? Did you make an intentional decision to do something about that? That's a completely anonymous, but it gives us some idea, gives you some idea of whether that information is enough to make somebody make a change that eventually is going to save us money.
Right, and I think
that's the whole point of this is making the employees healthier, so we pay less, and that's the win-win. Well, it's a win-win situation. So
yeah, ultimately. And I think in the one group we targeted the 5 or more risk factors, which we consider presenteeism. So they're showing up with high blood pressure, stress, high lipids, family history. And so that's the group that St. John's will identify, send out letters to invite them into programs, and then we'll work back off of that and maybe target that 4 or more risk factors.
I know it's a tremendous investment that we make in our people, a great investment that pays off. I know in my previous employment life, we started this, and it didn't take but 2 or 3 years to see significant return. And when I say return, I don't mean that sounds financial, but I'm talking about improved lifestyle, reduced cost of health premiums. People that had problems got them fixed before they became either chronic or life-threatening. And I mean, it just takes 1 or 2 of those to take care of the program, and it's easy. And it's just it's like Bruce said, I did this last week, and so it's just a great benefit for our employees to have that kind of thing and to do that. So, and like Bruce said, how do we get to 3,000 will be that's your problem. You figure out how to do that. So, but that's a great. I was trying to identify all the 16 risk factors while ago to see how many of those I had ahead of time, but hopefully I won't get one of those survey letters. Any other questions for on this? Okay. Thank you.
Is a cold room part of a risk factor for meetings? Yeah. Okay.
The varying of temperature.
Thank you. Excellent.
Moving on to 4.02, alternative program evaluations.
Dr. Harrell, please.
Good evening.
Evening.
In compliance with MSEP Standard 8.1 and Board of Education Policy IM, you have in front of you the biennial review for the alternative programs for Springfield Public Schools. I have with me this evening Ms. Kathy Clark and Mr. Justin Dickinson. They are the co-coordinators for our alternative programs, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Question for Dr. Harrell or anybody else?
Thank you.
Don't run off yet.
What are the
Better let you
plans
go
to
back.
expand middle college?
To expand middle college, we have 3 programs right now at this point. We are in conversations with OTC on a consistent basis about where that may go in the future, but right now that's rather on hold as resources are rather on hold.
Just for your information, the cohort districts are trying to get involved in it as well.
I mean, do we see that as a good thing in terms of being able to bring
I think
resources together? Or?
that's possible, yeah.
Questions? What about when we move into Studi? Because as you read through there's a capacity of 30 here, 20 here. What kind of, looking down the road in 3 years, what kind of numbers could we be looking at because we're able to have that kind of space? Is that, or some of your long-term thoughts about alternative programs when Studi's all done and Westport is completed?
Our primary focus as we expand into Studi is going to be a continuum, a K through 12 continuum, so that focus on the freshman level. Right now, we don't have a whole lot with the freshman level, so that's going to be one of our early keys. Each of our programs have a uniqueness in that the size is a critical piece. We would like to see expansion of some of those programs because there is need. We're not always reaching all those students that we can. However, again, the ratios of teachers to students are going to be a critical piece of that as we look at expansion.
Whenever I look at a report this long, 37, 38 pages, to the audience that doesn't see this, and as we go through it, if you were going to give bragging rights or critical analysis, 1 point either way, a positive, what's the best? We have key strengths, and then we have room for improvement. What do you think?
Wow. I think that as a district, we have a focus on persistence to graduation.
And so I think a key part of what we're doing are the students that were graduating through Bailey, or the students that were graduating through middle college. However, none of that occurs without the support of the other programs in the lower part of the continuum, lower meaning age and grade level. So I think that's really probably the key strength, is that we are fitting a niche and we are serving a population that I do believe would not be served if we didn't have these programs.
And then the other challenge was that the rising number of students we need to be able to reach, and it has to do with staff numbers.
I think to some extent staff numbers, yes. Another extent, just focusing on different ways of reaching that student. Our coordinators are consistently working with their staff on professional development ways and finding new approaches to deal with the students that we do have in the programs. So I think that's a critical piece too. As we continue to differentiate and look at different ways that we can reach those kiddos and make them successful, that's a component we're always trying to embrace. But with expansion, and specifically with the freshman program, yes, I think that staff and resources are going to be an issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. Moving on, 4.03, 2009 bond projects, quarterly report.
Mr. Wendt, please.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ritter. It's my pleasure to present to you the 2009 bond project update. As we look at the 2009 bond projects, the first priority on the bond was dealing with the air conditioning projects. There was a total of 9 air conditioning projects that make up the 2009 bond series. And out of the 9 projects, 2 projects have already started. The remaining 7 projects are currently under design, where the engineers are doing field verification, looking at selection of equipment, life cycle studies, and that. And we will be looking at putting those projects out to bid starting late November through March. The 2 projects that we've already begun, one is Jarrett Middle School. And at Jarrett, the ductwork piping and the main equipment is already complete. They still need to hook up the energy recovery units to them. The startup of the chiller is actually scheduled for October 13th, obviously dependent on temperatures outside, as it needs to be under load for them to check that out. They do anticipate having the ceilings, the drop ceilings, finished up by the end of this week. There is testing and balancing that's going on, which will be followed up with commissioning. Reed Middle School is the other site that is currently underway. They have a majority of their ductwork and piping that is complete. They have some of the equipment in. They are waiting on the rooftop units to arrive. And we anticipate it'll probably be about 2 weeks for them to complete their ceiling work, again with testing and balancing, followed by commissioning to be done. Both of these projects came in under the budget. The next project that we looked at is Hillcrest High School. Along with the electrical and technology infrastructure upgrades, there's also auditorium remodel work to be done, restroom remodel, elevator installation in the Hyper. We're also looking at enclosing a walkway between the Hyper and the main building, kitchen improvements, ceiling, flooring work, some hot water pipe repair and replacement, and the stadium lighting. The stadium lighting has been completed, and I will also mention one other thing that we are introducing into the project. A while back, through the hard work of Mr. Bishop, had applied for some FEMA funds to look at incorporating a FEMA storm shelter into several of our projects. He had done this quite a while back. Since then, in passing the 09 bond series, we have received a preliminary approval for that. We hope that we will get final approval sometime this month. As the architects look at the project, they're looking at potentially how they could incorporate a storm shelter into this project, and they are looking at doing that potentially with how they work with the kitchen and also the cafeteria area in the lower level. So that's part of the challenge that they are working through. With final approval, the FEMA funds would offset the additional costs of creating that storm shelter, which would be a benefit not only to our students and to staff, but also to the community. Westport, the project that you were just speaking about as we were talking about the alternative programs, and the Westport, here is a preliminary shot of what the architects and the design committee have come up with related to making Westport a K-8 facility. Basically, the main part of the building is right through here. And there would be an addition of classrooms, gymnasium, kitchen area, commons, and administration here. One of the things that as you look at this, one of the comments that the public was very concerned about was keeping the middle school section of the facility separate from the elementary section of the facility, and this works quite well. This next photo or slide shows how this building would lay out on the facility. Basically, where you currently have the entrance or the main office area to Westport right here, with this design basically puts the new entrance facing the park. And it aligns with the work and the partnership we have with the school parks and the work that they are doing. Also works with the improvements that the Park District has already planned on with the pool. One of the nice things that this actually does to help with us, as you may recall, one of the other concerns was traffic flow. And working closely with the parks, they have agreed to allow us to actually connect to Hilton and have a drive through here. Coming off of Westport, we can actually come up through the site here, and also tying in with the parking around the pool. So there's a lot of opportunity to really make a positive improvement as we look at the traffic concerns with that Westport site. So we're very excited about how this project is coming along. The Jeffries project is a project that has basically an addition of a gym with some restrooms. This, just like Hillcrest and also Westport, also have preliminary approval for a storm shelter as well. And I show this slide just to help remind people of just how narrow this site is for the architectural firms to work with. And so as one of the concepts, as they're looking at it at this point, is to actually put the new gymnasium out towards where the current entrance of the building is. This would be scenic down along here. And so we would use these doors on this end of the building facing scenic would create as the new entrance to the building, so it would help locate the gym in the middle of the facility. We would then look at the potential of a bus drive connecting to one of the streets through to the side here to help with some of the traffic issues we have getting buses in and out of the facility as well. At Glendale, we have the electrical and technology infrastructure upgrades, and we also have the installation of the new stadium bleachers. The new stadium bleachers are complete. It was very tight. The general contractor had his hands full as they worked in getting that completed for our first game. We also, as I mentioned at Hillcrest, stadium lightings. We have stadium lighting within the bond language for Glendale, Hillcrest, and Kickapoo, and the lighting has all been installed at this point as well. The technology, there's $2.5 million in this bond for technology, as Mr. Green has been working on, and as Mrs. Kissinger has made presentations to the board on as well. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Wynn? Glendale bleachers are nice. But any bleachers are nice, yeah. And the lights are good too. So good job on that one. No other questions? Okay, moving on. 2006 bond projects, final report. Dr. Ritter.
Mr. Went?
As we look at the 2006 bond projects, I want to take a quick run through all the projects that we did complete under the 2006 bond. And we start with our air conditioning projects, and I won't read them all, but there were 15 air conditioning projects that made up part of the initial $96.5 million bond for the 2006. From that, we had 10 construction projects. The first one was Cherokee, and Cherokee we added a new construction of 67,500 square feet, and we did a renovation of 58,000 square feet to the Cherokee building. So our new building total is just over 125,000 square feet. We put a new entrance to the facility, new kitchen cafeteria, added classrooms, did a library infill, and some additional renovation to the 6th and 8th grade wings. At Glendale, from the rendering, we gave Glendale a new entrance to it, and we put the science labs right across the front of the building. There are 8 new science labs, and we added 36,180 square feet to that facility. Hillcrest was the addition of science labs. We added 10 new science labs and a total of 25,745 square feet to that facility. At Kickapoo, we had 2 additions to it. We had the library addition of 9,450 square feet, and then the science lab addition where we added 12 labs. Our total new square footage for Kickapoo High School was 38,882 square feet. See the library there. Then as we go to Parkview, where we added a kitchen, cafeteria, we also added library, we added additional 12 classrooms and 2 science labs, so we had a total of 49,192 square feet to the Parkview facility. And of course, we added our new David Harrison Elementary, which was just under 59,000 square feet. At Wanda Gray, we added 5 kindergarten classrooms, a new gymnasium, and we relocated the administrative area and added additional security in the entranceways, as we do with our new construction, for a total of 18,125 square feet. At Weaver Elementary, we added a total of 25,660 square feet, adding a kitchen and a cafeteria, so separate from the gymnasium, and renovated the 28,400 square feet of the existing building and added air conditioning, as we did with Wanda Gray, to that facility as well. And then of course we had Weller, which we added new classrooms, a gym, and moved the administration area, and we added a total of 18,991 square feet for Weller. And then Wilson's Creek, which I forget about because it was like the very first project we did in the 06 bond, where we added 8 classrooms onto that for 8,460 square feet. Following that, the additional projects that we did with the 2006 bond, we had the track at the JFK Stadium, we had the Hickory Hills project, and we added 3 additional air conditioning projects, Bowerman, Campbell, and Shady Dell. At the beginning of the 06 bond, we had the initial bond funds of $96,500. We had bond premiums of $4,506,000 and interest earnings of $10,525,000. So our total revenue was $111,532. I'm sorry.
Million.
Thank you. $111,532,132. Our original bond projects came in at $96,196,279. So we came in just over $300,000 under the original 96.5. The additional bond projects was a cost of $14,668,213, and then we had our bond issuance costs and our project management costs, and our total expenditures was $113,380,213. So we ended up with an overage of $1,848,081. And that is the conclusion of the report, and I would answer any questions.
I think first of all, I'm kind of exhausted right now, watching all that work. That's tremendous work, Mr. Wendt, and your project managers as well. Excellent, excellent work. And thank you for all that. Board, for about 2 years ago, administration projected additional funds available from this 2006 bond initiative, about 15 to 16 million. You might remember that. I think it was in July or someplace like that. Administration proceeded to encourage the school board to add projects to the 2006 bond initiative to take advantage of the friendly bidding environment due to the recession. In creating the initial estimate, we looked at a snapshot of the financial picture at that point in time. Unfortunately, it was not a complete picture, and as a result, we spent $1.8 million, as Mr. Wendt said, more on additional projects than was actually remaining from the 2006 bond funds. Mr. Chodas at this time will explain the overestimate and take action to ensure improved controls over the future bond funds. So, Mr. Chodas, please.
Thank you. As you mentioned, a little over 2 years ago, we came up with a projection of approximately $16 million in additional funds from the 06 bonds. That estimate was based on actual expenditures, encumbrances, projected additional expenditures, and projected additional revenues. As we looked at the projects and they came to completion, we realized the $1.8 million overspent. We analyzed the initial $16 million projection, and what we determined at that time was that the encumbrances were less than what we had thought they were, and that led to the overspending of the $1.8 million. What have we done to address that situation and make sure it doesn't happen again? The 06 bond accounting was done in the bond department, and at the start of this year we moved the bond accounting to the finance department with the additional controls within that department, and we are comfortable and confident that we have taken the steps necessary to ensure that an overspending of bond funds does not happen again. Any questions?
Ms. Gallo?
Just for clarification, the overestimate was on was based on the projected savings from this bond, right? I mean, that's where see if I can.
Yes.
It wasn't from the initial allocation. It was based on
Well,
the money that.
It wasn't solely related to the additional projects. At the time, we anticipated that the original projects would come in further under budget. You heard Mr. Wentz say they did come in $300,000 under budget, but when the $16 million was projected at that time, we anticipated that they would come in further under budget. So it was a combination of the original projects and the additional projects.
And had we ever been in that position before as a district that we know of in terms of our bond projects? I mean, that was an incredible amount of what we considered, it really was money that we could use to allocate to additional needs within the district.
Well, the 06 bond at that time was the largest in the history of the state of Missouri.
The largest in the history of the state of Missouri?
Correct. And
the economy at that point was very
right.
favorable to.
Right. We had experienced a good bidding environment. So, at that time, we wanted to move forward with that $16 million in projects because of the bidding environment, because we could go ahead and air condition 3 schools sooner than we would have been able to if we'd waited. And we were also able to pay for a little over half of the construction cost of Hickory Hills. Just to give you an idea of the savings there, if we had gone ahead and not use that $11 million to pay for the Hickory Hills construction costs and instead had added that to the lease purchase financing that we did for the other half, if we had not subsequently paid off that LPC over the life of the LPC, we would have spent an additional $5 million. So that by using that $11 million to essentially pay down an LPC, we saved $5 million.
And then, I know since I've been on the board, my own personal family budget, which deals in the thousands versus the millions, to kind of get to really get a feel for what we're talking about in terms of the percentage of the bond. And it sounds like, based on what Mr. Went was saying, I was just making some quick calculations up here, that we were dealing with about $111 million worth of money, right? So 1.8 million is about 1.6% of the, roughly.
1.6,
Don't hold me to
1.7, right.
But I'm just trying to get, for an average person, maybe building a $150,000 home or something, that means about an overestimate of about $2,400. So, I guess that it helps me to put that in perspective, because when we're talking millions, it sounds like a huge amount of money, but in perspective, I think it's important for people to realize, to have some comparisons. And I guess the only other question I would have is, how do we anticipate covering this amount of money?
You heard Mr. Went present the quarterly report on the 09 bond projects. We have already received bids on 2 of our air conditioning projects, and we have, based on those bids and based on running through the numbers, Mr. Went and the project managers, we anticipate on those 2 projects that will come in under budget by about $1 million. That leaves 7 additional air conditioning projects Granted, the first two we did, Jared and Reed, are the two largest air conditioning projects. And it is, our hope that we can come up with the remaining 800,000 out of the remaining 7 air conditioning projects. And I do want to say, we will do all the projects on the 09 project list. That's a definite.
And would that be an unusual thing for a school district to do, is to use bond funds?
I had a couple of conversations, one with our auditor, and another conversation with Greg Bricker, who the board is familiar with. Both of them indicated that it is not uncommon for a district to overspend a particular year's bond. Obviously, because of the size of ours, it's a larger dollar amount. I asked how would other districts address an overage. They indicated, there's a couple of ways. One, that most districts use their capital projects money to address any overage in the bond fund. We do not want to do that because capital projects money is operating money. We do not want to touch the operating money. But we are confident that with the 09 bond funds, that with the $1 million that we are already under budget from the 2 projects, that we can address the $1.8 million.
And you feel confident that the way that the bond accounting is being handled now, you feel confident in that change?
I feel much more confident,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Well, I guess I think it sounds like we've consulted with the people that we need to consult with. They've told us it's not an unusual situation. But however, I think one of the things that we've tried very hard as a district is to be, effective and efficient with our resources. And, so the fact that, we've addressed this issue and we've reported the process and the results to our patrons, I think is really important. Because I think that it demonstrates a continued commitment to being as transparent as possible with what happens with our taxpayers' money. And I think, one of the things since I've been on the board, I think we've tried very hard as a board and a team of administrators and then with the bond project managers to really manage those public funds that have been entrusted to us with integrity and accuracy. And so, I just think that stating again our commitment to that this doesn't, deviate from that commitment, and that the improvements that you've outlined, to us, should help us make those improvements to make this kind of miscommunication not ever happen again. So I appreciate your efforts. And, I guess the other thing I would just point out is that this was found internally, and reported internally and handled internally, and it wasn't the result of any outside entity coming in and having to find that for us. So I think that speaks to the quality of the people that we have monitoring that. So.
Questions, Ms. Chodes? Ms. Twitty?
My comments would be coming, Dr. Brady and I both serve on the Finance Committee, and I think we knew this information about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And in using Dr. Ritter's word, disappointment, there was disappointment when we received the information. However, with the information you're sharing tonight, and as the public dissects it and understands that the committee, and as we report out to the board, I have a renewed sense of confidence of how we're going to be handling the ongoing bond projects and the monies and the reporting we always find ways to do things better. And communication is obviously the key. And I'm, again, speaking for Dr. Prater here, but we do have a sense of renewed confidence, and I think we're going to do well going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mrs. Twitty, and one of the first things we asked you was, have you corrected the process? And with the details you went through with us on Finance Committee, I think we're very comfortable with that. And of course, we're going to be questioning you again on that process as we go forward. But I think the key thing is see where the accounting, where it went off and what we need to do to correct it. And I'm very pleased with what you've done so far.
Osmer?
I hate to be devil's advocate, but I guess. But this was not we thought the bids were going to come in a lot lower than they did. That wasn't the issue here.
That's correct.
Okay. It's also not just a common overage, that other school districts have overages, and that's just a common way of doing bonds. I mean, from what I understand, and again, we got this information recently, something went wrong with how money was encumbered. Is that right? On these projects?
I mean, there was not something done wrong. It was that we thought that a certain amount of money had been encumbered, or certain expenditures had been encumbered, and it turns out with hindsight that they were not.
So something went wrong.
Timing-wise, yes.
Somewhere
yes.
along the line, because, and believe me, I don't want to overemphasize this, and I certainly want to emphasize that all the projects that we did with this extra money were certainly needed, and certainly would have been on the 2009 bond if we were able to do them in 2006 or 2008. We certainly benefited from very good bidding atmosphere as a result of doing this. But I don't want us also to get away from the fact that 2 years ago, this board was told you'll have $16 million to spend, additional monies to spend. And in fact, at that time, the correct answer was we had $14 million to spend. So I think it's important that there's a $2 million discrepancy in $16 million. And I think that from what I'm hearing from you, that there was an encumbrance issue, and because of the way the process worked for the 2006 bond, and my understanding, you'd already decided in the 2009 bond to do the process differently before we even found out about this $2 million discrepancy, correct?
Correct.
And the idea is that going forward, this encumbrance issue, whatever it was, isn't going to raise its head again.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So, but I want us to make sure that I liken it to, we didn't know what was in our bank account 2 years ago, and we overstated what was in that bank account by $2 million. And I'm comfortable as well that the process has been changed, and it was changed prior to this. But I mean, this is still as Ms. Twitty says, disappointing that this board has presented information that we have $16 million when in fact we only have $14 million. And regardless of whether that $16 million was spent properly, which it was, whether it went to good projects, which it did, whether we can roll this into the 2009 bond, which we can, I believe, still, you can't get away from the fact that 2 years ago, we didn't know what was in our bank account, and I hope that the process has changed to the point where that's not going to happen again, because that's not a place we want to be going forward.
Well, I do want to say, and I agree with most of what you say. I think the indication that it's similar to being incorrect in our checking account by $2 million is an oversimplification, because what we were trying to project at that time was not just what was there at that point in time, but future earnings as well, future expenditures as well, and that complicates the projection.
No, and I certainly don't want to oversimplify it, but it's certainly the way it appeared to me is that there was a projection of 16 million when in fact it was 14 million, and we know, or we think we know why that was, and we've already corrected it, but that's a big chunk of change.
Could I just have a clarification on the amount, because I hear 2 million, 1.8. I mean, I think it's important that we not throw around figures that are inaccurate. How much are we talking about?
1,848,000.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes hard for me to remember yesterday, much less 2008. But I don't remember, the bond issue was 2006, and we were looking at a bond issue for 2009. So we were completing $96 million in 3 years. And in 2008, I don't remember if somebody came to us and said, oh, we've got a lot more money, we want to do something, or if the board initiated the conversation of, is there going to be more money, can we do more? I don't know. But looking back, the only thing I wish we'd done is finish the 2006 bond issue and then looked at what we had, and then we would not be having this discussion. So I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it really came from this table to say, oh, how are we doing? Is there going to be extra money? Because obviously there was from the 96. I mean, we completed every project and completed it under budget, but because of investing and other wise use of resources, we would have had additional money to spend. And if we were talking about that today, when we finished the 2006 bond issue and said, we've got $14.1 million to spend, we'd all be really excited. So I'm not sure who jumped the gun, but we all jumped on board because it seemed like a smart thing to do, and hindsight's always 20/20. And I'd say I'd want to finish the 2009 bond project completely before I start doing that again, after I've done this one. So I don't, if we would have actually completed it, we would be talking about real exciting things and how we were going to use that money, and being able to do, you know, maybe some things we put in the 2009 bond we're going to be able to do additionally. So I just think we got too excited about that possibility, and I'm confident that that won't happen again.
Dr. Brown?
Well, I can maybe remember some of it, but I'm not sure all of it. But I remember you all, administration, coming to us probably early 2008 and saying, I think we are going to, because of some good bidding, some good investment earnings, we're going to have extra bond money left. It may be 14 million, it may be 15, it could be as high as 16. I think those were some of the first numbers that you threw out. And I would have hated, yes, I mean, I'm disappointed as well, but I would have hated us to have been sitting on that money with the bidding climate that we had and the schools that are now air conditioned that wouldn't have been, sitting on that $14 million until today, and then saying, oh, look, we've got $14 million in the bank. Gee, I wish we'd spent that back when we could have made more impact. I think we might have had you on a hot seat had that happened. So,
yeah, why did we have $14 million?
Yeah.
Did we
so
overestimate
I think if
the
we
bond?
hadn't, and yeah, you've got to do some estimations, you've got bills still to pay, and I'm glad you fixed the system, but I think if we had not known about that and been able to use that wisely, well, we would have had, number one, 3 schools that would have been 2 years later getting air conditioned. And I think that would have been a travesty and a poor use of tax dollars. So I remember that when it first came up, the numbers, were a little bit soft, and had they been refined a little bit sooner, yes, we would have been, maybe one school would have waited on air conditioning. But I think to do it, to have waited, I mean, I have to disagree a little bit with Bruce. I think to have waited on spending all that would have been an unfortunate thing.
Just to pick up on that, and I agree, Dr. Prater. I think that, but that presupposes that we've fixed the problem. And I think that's the important thing here, is because I would disagree with Bruce as well, that if we're sitting on what we know is some pot of money, and we've got a very favorable bid climate, then I think we do ourselves a disservice, not jumping out there and getting things done for a lot less than we could have. But again, it presupposes that we've got all the glitches fixed, so that when somebody tells us we've got X amount of dollars, we spend X amount of dollars, and we don't spend Y amount of dollars. So I'm certainly comfortable in the future with you coming back to us and saying, conservatively, we've got X amount of dollars, with the understanding that that's what we're going to get, as opposed to you got X amount of dollars and in fact you don't. I think that's the issue. It's not, for me anyway, it's certainly not, let's do every project, pay every bill, close everything out, and then see what money remains, because I think you then do yourself a disservice by not jumping on attractive bid climates. But I certainly want to be in a position to feel comfortable that whatever caused this $1.84 million discrepancy has been rectified.
Just a clarification. Was this the first bond that we had this structure in terms, I know it's the first bond that we had project managers in-house with, and so this would be, am I to assume this is the first one we've done the in-house accounting as well?
That's correct. With
Okay.
the accounting in the bond department.
Right, and it seems to me that that decision to do that had very favorable results in terms of how the projects were managed, the kind of reporting that we got all along from Scott and his team, and the fact that that structure, at least in terms of the project the in-house project management team, proved to be a very prudent move. And so it seems to me, what?
Well, it was just leading into a conversation we had at finance meeting.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, but so it seems to me that if we can fix the piece that didn't appear to work well, and that may have been the in-house accounting piece, and have that moved. And as I understand it, it's now moved with all of our financial team under one roof.
It's in the finance department
right.
now.
As well as I understand, there's been a movement of grants. The grants accounting has also moved. So I think sometimes, and you're relatively new in your position, sometimes you inherit a structure that was put in place by a predecessor, and so I appreciate the fact that you and your team have looked at how to do this more effectively and efficiently, and I think Andy's right. It would be nice to have maybe a report periodically about how that's working, or we see it in the 09 report. So Jean's just jumping.
Well, it's only because this came up
about
at finance meeting tonight, and it, on an evening when we're talking about a bit of a disappointment, many people think, well, how you turn this into lemonade? Well, there is some lemonade in this, and in particular to the management costs that you just brought up. And so, Steve, if you'll go ahead and share that piece, which was new to us tonight.
Yeah, I just was provided this information from Mr. Wendt pertaining to the management costs. He went back and looked at prior bond projects and looked at the percentage of the total cost that was attributed to the management costs. Central High School, a project we well remember, had management costs of 8.2%. Then what we did is we started using project or program managers. So Wilson's Creek had their program manager, Parkview High had theirs, and all the air conditioning projects in 03 had theirs. And the management percentages for those projects were 3.89%, 4.3%, and 4.87%. So those three averaged 4.35% of the total bond costs related to management. For the '06, the in-house management costs totaled 1.49%. So, less than half the cost. What I did was I just took that 4.35 that we averaged for Wilson's Creek, Parkview, and the '03 air conditioning, and said if we had spent the same percentage in the '06, our management costs would have gone from the actual cost of 1.6 million up to 4.8 million. So there was significant savings in doing it in-house.
Well, and I think, each time we do this, we improve upon the process, and this particular piece is what we'll improve upon next time.
And we did move, you mentioned we moved the grant accounting into the finance department. We moved the bond accounting into the finance department. We actually did that with a net reduction in FTEs for the district as a whole. I'm not sure we can add anything else to the finance department without me having to watch my back. But.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jodas.
Thank you.
Stay up there.
Moving on to the next item. This is an item for action we need to vote on. Tax anticipation note. Dr. Ritter.
And Mr. Chodas, please.
The last couple of years, we've come to the board regarding tax anticipation notes. As the board knows, a significant portion of our local property taxes are received in the months December through February. On the revenue side, however, our expenditures are relatively consistent throughout the year on a month-to-month basis. So because the bulk of our revenue starts coming in December, the November and actually December time frame is a low point for the district in terms of fund balance. That's one of the reasons why we maintain our policy of a 10% fund balance. In past years, we have looked at the tax anticipation notes financing through a program that was sponsored by MSBA and the Health and Educational Facilities Authority. I'm not going to go into the details as to why we're not going that route this year, but what we will be doing this year is doing a competitive selection process with various financial institutions and local banks. And we are, we want to have the board approve a maximum amount. We don't want to underestimate this amount. So at this time, we're asking that the board authorizes the solicitation of proposals to finance operating funds through the issuance of tax anticipation notes in an amount not to exceed $10 million. Questions?
Questions for Ms. Jodas?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Prater and a second by Ms. Twitty that the board authorize the solicitation of proposals to finance projected operating fund cash flow deficit through the issuance of tax anticipation notes in the amount not to exceed $10 million. Dr. Holman?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We've gone 2 hours. We're going to take a break, 5-minute break, if that's okay, before we start into the next.
How's your form?
No, you don't.
Let's go ahead and get,
But we were stalled.
I bet we had more fun at Grand Rapids.
get started again.
Yeah, exactly.
Although that didn't stop some people, which I thought.
That's what I heard.
Oh, man, it feels good in here.
Now that the heat's on, we'll hope everybody didn't go sleep. Okay,
Yeah, I know.
let's move on here, custodial group.
We get tea.
Moving on to action items for separate consideration. 6.01, revision of board policy EBCD, emergency school closing. Dr. Harrell? I mean,
Is there anybody in the board that have any questions?
nothing's changed since the
Right.
first time we heard it.
Right.
Looked at. Any further questions for Dr. Harrell? Okay. 6.0, we'll vote on that next, on the 19th. Item 6.02, revision of board policy IC, school year, school calendar. Also second reading. Any questions? No changes to that either? Okay. 6.03, revision of board policy JECG, dual enrollment, dual credit. Also second reading. You're getting off pretty easy.
Do we get a report about the dual credit program? And when do we get that? Due to us?
We don't get a specific report
part of-
back from the universities, if that's what you're asking. No.
Bring that up under other than, I think.
Moving on, 6.04, revision of board policy JHA, student insurance program. No changes to that one either? Okay. Any questions? Okay, 6.05, revision of board policy IKFA, graduation exercises, and IKFB, graduation provisions for students with disability. This is first reading, so.
This is the first reading of IKFA and IKFB. And we have used the MSBA model policy to combine IKFA within IKFB. And IKFB, we made revisions to that to stay in compliance with Caitlin's Law, which is new legislation dealing with students with disability who have completed 4 years of instruction but may not have completed all the requirements at that point to allow them to go through graduation process with their peers.
Any questions for Dr. Harrell?
Thank you.
Okay, we vote on that.
That's first reading.
That's first reading, so no, we won't vote on them. Item 6.06, revision of board policy JECA, admission of students, also first reading. Dr. Harrell?
The change you have before you in JECA looks specifically at cases where a non-domiciled student is placed in a residential care facility by a county or state division of child care assistance. And it just makes, again, aligns our policies with MSBA policies.
Questions for Dr. Harrell? Okay, this
Thank
is
you.
also first reading. Item 6.07, custodial service, consulting and management agreement.
Mr. Mr. Went.
Good evening again. On August 11th, 2010, the Springfield Schools released a request for proposal for our custodial management services. We did hold a pre-bid conference. We had 3 companies that did attend that. On September 8th, we received sealed bids. We received bids from 3 vendors: Airmark Corporation, OJS Systems, and Jana King of Springfield. The district put together a committee. Dave Pelletier, our coordinator of purchasing, Rhonda Bowman, our district custodial staff member. We had an executive director, Ben Hackenworth, Dave Bishop, director of building services, and myself. We reviewed the proposals that were submitted, and we looked at quite a few criteria as we went through that, from the overall program concept to organizational structure, financial, technical program support, training programs, willingness to guarantee the performance targets, and a commitment to CQI were some of the evaluation criteria. The Airmark proposal was unanimously supported by the review committee. The financial package includes performance guarantees using a balanced scorecard approach that will measure areas of quality inspection, customer satisfaction, defining our training program results, and leadership and corporate value results. The base management fee for November 1st, 2010 through October 31st, 2011 is set at $502,962 with an optional 2% prepayment. There's a performance guarantee, adds a maximum additional of $100,000 paid throughout the year. So the maximum contract payout would be $602,962, which is a savings of $60,000 over our current contract. Before I mention the recommendation, I would like to point out that we have a visitor with us this evening, Mr. Tim Waldsmith from Airmark, and then Rod Owen, our site director from Airmark, and his team, Chuck DeWitt and Joe Fox, are here with us this evening. And we do appreciate all that they do for the district, and it is the recommendation to select Airmark Corporation to provide management consultant services for the district's custodial department effective November 1st, 2010 through October 31st, 2011 with options for 4 renewals.
Questions for Mr. Wimp? Mr. Hosmer?
Was there any talk of having any custodians on the review committee?
When we initially looked at it, the proposals that we first got in, there was such a wide difference in the proposals. If there were proposals that would have been close to what the Airmark proposal would have been, we would have expanded the committee, gone into the interview process, and also looked at potential site visits. But there was such a difference between the 3 proposals that were issued that it did not warrant taking the additional steps.
And where was, just on a money basis, where was the Airmark bid compared
Airmark
to
was
the other?
the lowest.
On the money as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Callen?
Do we currently have a performance guarantee in our contract with them?
Yes, we do. It's currently $80,000.
$80,000. And have we paid that in recent years?
We have.
At the maximum? Or
We have. The first year it was not at the maximum. This past year it has been at the maximum.
I think just in general, since I've been on the board till now, the satisfaction numbers that we see in the reports that we get, and just the hearing the just the testimonies from building principals about the cleanliness of their schools and the cooperation that they have with Airmark. I'm glad, I'm glad they were the low bid, because I think that our relationship with them over the years has certainly improved, and I think they're providing really quality service to our sites. So I'm pleased.
And if I may add, this was, we were just ending our 4th year. We had the potential option of extending the current contract an additional year, but due to the economic conditions, we felt it was timely to go ahead and rebid these services. And we are pleased as well that Airmark remains to be our partner, and we gained some additional savings.
I'd move the board accept the recommendation.
We
We'll just go
we
into
do it now, don't we?
general consent for.
Okay, sorry. I thought we had to do it now because the contract started.
although I'm sure Airmark would not mind.
I'd like to have that done.
No.
You can't raise your hand. No, I'm sorry. Okay, well, we'll vote on that next on the 19th.
I do want to say that about 4 years ago, we were concerned about Airmark and concerned about the service we were having. And that turnaround was immediate. And they bought into the quality initiative really quick, and the outcome has just been phenomenal. And so Mr. Owens has done a great job, and I think their response is just unbelievable. And also, I really like the way they're sustainable. And their innovations around that is really remarkable. So thank you for that.
Moving on, routine action items, which, as you'll note on board docs, we will vote on those on the 19th. Moving on to comments from the board. Any legislative update? Spent 45 minutes a while ago. I don't, any revelations in the last 45 minutes? Anything different? Okay. Future issues?
I would at some point, it's not an immediate need, but I am interested in seeing numbers for the number of our students that are participating in dual enrollment with dual credit and what institutions. I mean, that would be helpful for me to see, I think, and what kind of financial commitment there is from the district. I would just like to see how that program is run and who benefits from it and who participates. And I don't remember seeing anything like that. And I think it's a program that students and families like. But I'd like to be assured that the rigor in which those classes are being delivered at the high school level is comparable to what students would be getting at the college level. So I'm not sure.
I just wanted to step forward because I wanted to apologize. I misunderstood your question earlier. I thought you were asking me, did we get a report from the universities about the students that we had over there? And the answer is no, we don't. We don't do a very good job at this point keeping track of what students are dual enrolled because they have the option of being in the class. They have the option of taking dual enrollment or not. So we can tell you how many students were in that class. But what I did was I did gather some numbers for students who are taking dual enrollment classes, students who are in IB classes, students who are in AP classes. AP does throw another curve at us because just being in the class doesn't mean they'll take the exam.
Right, or IB.
Right. So I will put some numbers together for you, but we aren't, at this point, we aren't measuring that or keeping those numbers the way we probably need to be doing, and so we'll be trying to shore that up.
Yeah, and if there's any financial commitment from the district, I'd like to know that too.
Take care of that.
Any other future issues?
We have 3 presentations at the Missouri School Board Association. Just thought I'd share that. One is Dr. Goodman's going to be presenting on Cognos and its impact on achievement. We are really Anita Kissinger is working with Park Hill, and we're going to have a joint presentation on Baldrige and continuous improvement. And then we found out a week ago that we're going to be giving a presentation on collective bargaining, Springfield style. Is that how it was? Something like that.
I think that's the title.
Yeah,
of it.
We found out we were listed, so we're going to be presenting on that. Anyway, so that's happening, and invite all of you to sit in on those presentations. Okay.
Any other future? Other? Do you want me to? Yeah, sure. Yes.
You're going to be part of this.
And, Dr. Homan and Dr. Ritter were on this visit as well, but I think it's important to report back to the board about our involvement with the community leadership visit, which this year stayed in Springfield. And we visited Springfield as, and we were supposed to have new eyes and to give ourselves a new perspective on the community that we lived in. The nice thing about staying in Springfield, it allowed a larger number of people to participate. There were about 76 participants from business and government and education, and we were busy for 2 days, 2 straight days. And I think what the group came away with is probably something that people sitting at this table already know, just because of the nature and the relationship that we have and the understanding of the diverse population of students that we educate. But I think the theme of the visit, or what people kind of came away with, was a tale of two cities. The first day we spent a lot of time focusing on the economic development of the city over the years, looking at what's going on currently, particularly with JVIC and the amazing innovations that are going on down there, particularly in the medical field. Just really, local talent developing some pretty amazing devices. And what I came away from that particular part of the visit was thinking about how we can start to integrate our students with the kind of cutting-edge research that's going on at that facility. And whether it's, externships or, actually, certain classes that have a piece of that kind of technology. Okay, Dr. Riggs is nodding her head.
We are doing that.
Well,
during the summer, and then also anyway, there's conversations now with Jim Baker.
With our students or with our, okay.
Students.
And I think that whole area downtown is becoming, the whole idea commons, and that whole idea, I think, as we talk about choice, thinking about how we might integrate a program of choice down to take advantage of, I think, a lot of creative energy that's going on in that area. So we also talked about manufacturing and maybe kind of the more traditional businesses and economic development in the area, and really how a community has to balance those, and how a community really has to balance the economic development needs with the community development needs. And I think Springfield has done a pretty exceptional job of being able to do that, but the challenge there is always to continue to keep that in front of us. The second day focused primarily on the obstacles that may be standing in Springfield's way of future economic success. And a sociologist from Missouri State spent a lot of time talking about his social capital report, social capital report, which talks a lot about how people in our community, how invested you feel within the decision-making structure of the community at large. And I think that that's what would impact us as we try to reach out to our patrons who have various backgrounds and live in different parts of the city. How do we connect them to the decisions and the policies that are happening in our community? And I think that's something actually that the schools have an advantage over some other agencies in town, because we have schools all over the city, and we are educating a very diverse group of students, and we have attempted to bridge those traditional divides by having standardized curriculum, having standardized benchmarking, providing additional resources, both human and financial, to schools that serve our higher needs children, and really providing renovated facilities, throughout our city. And I think that that's something, and providing 21st century teaching and learning environments, in a variety. We saw that tonight. You see those bond projects; they are not just concentrated in one area of the city. They are throughout our district. So I think that that's something that we may have something to to bring to the table as we talk about this stuff. In addition, we talked about Springfield's striking lack of cultural diversity, and we heard from a panel of primarily African Americans who talked specifically about passive racism in this community, and also really a welcoming deficit to people of color, which I thought was an interesting phrase. And I know we've talked about, you know, our achievement gap and what that means, and so I think that's a reality that we have to face, and I think we've addressed it to some degree, but it's something that's going to continue to need to be addressed within our student population. So it was a very busy 2 days. You know, I think we ended with a realization that for children to be successful, they have to have a healthy start, and healthy, not, you know, physically healthy, but emotionally healthy and intellectually healthy. And it goes back to what we were talking about on the legislative priority is really focusing on early childhood education and what that means, what that could mean for our community in the long term in terms of really dealing, you know, front loading instead of having to go in and be remedial in a lot of different areas. So we had some of our own SPS people spoke. Jay Anderson from Campbell Elementary and Missy Riley were part of the panel, and I'm always proud of the quality of people that we have that are employed, you know, with us and doing this work on our behalf. But I think that this community very, very quickly will be looking for a collective and collaborative effort to address the need of universal access to early childhood education. And because we already have, and it goes back to what Andy was saying earlier tonight, those quality programs in place, I think, you know, I know we're at the table now, but I think we'll continue to need to be a leader in those discussions. But not the primary source of providing that, you know, looking for ways to partner and collaborate, because you know, and I won't have the numbers right, but for every $1 that's spent, what is it, like $12 to $14 is saved for the future, is returned to the community in savings of social services that don't need to be accessed for a child that receives early childhood education. You know, if somebody told me I could invest right now and get, you know, $12 to $14 back for every dollar I invested, I would be putting my money there. So I think that that's, in terms of our involvement in the results of that visit, I think that that's probably what we're going to hear the most about. And I don't know if Norm and Mike want to add anything to that. But
I think you covered it pretty well. I think the early childhood piece was something that we heard on a recurring basis, particularly throughout the second day.
I think Mike Nixel brought up a point that I think is going to be something that's going to resonate throughout the next 5 to 10 years, and that is compressing education to where it should be a seamless move from preschool through a college degree, and looking at the college readiness and maybe dipping down even into sophomore, junior year from that. So I thought his conversation around that and the conversation and the position that he holds now, along with his work with the governor, I think that was a good part of it as well. Other than that, I thought you covered it pretty much.
I think the flexibility in which education is delivered to an individual, you know, I mean, we're so rigid in how, you know, the years are prescribed and the coursework is prescribed, and, you know, I really sensed from Dr. Nitzel's presentation and Dr. Higdon too. Right. I mean, two people that I respect greatly with their perspective on higher education, and just the need to be much more flexible with individual students to make them, you know, successful. Not trying to fit everybody into the same peg.
I know there's a lot of effort going on with the P20 councils and making that seamless transition from at every level. And so the mix of people that were there private sector? Was there a good mix of private sector, or was it more institutional?
Oh, no, I mean, there,
Pretty good
a
mixture.
lot of
Was
the
it good?
chamber,
Okay.
a lot of the chamber board who are, business owners or, involved in some major businesses in town.
I think that's really important to see
City officials,
both.
county officials, education officials. It was a real nice cross-section. And like I said, because we stayed here, the cost to individuals or to, entities was much less than when we travel. And so it really allowed for a larger group to be involved. And it was more culturally diverse and ethnically diverse than it's been in the past, too. So I think that was...
Yeah, both hospitals were represented. The presidents of universities were there. So that was pretty rich group.
It was really
Enriching group.
interesting to look at your city from that perspective,
Oh.
as a visitor would.
Yep.
Okay, great. Any other issues? Okay, if not, don't forget any plus deltas that you might have. And we do need to go into executive session, so I would entertain a motion for the board to conduct an executive session following this meeting to discuss legal and real estate matters as provided in section 610-021-12 RSMO.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Callen, second by Ms. Twitty. Mr. Osborne? Aye.
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 Aye.